might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here, you can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way. Because I'm happy, clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy, clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy, clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy, clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Here come bad news, talking this and that. Give me all you got, don't hold it back. Well, I should probably warn you, I'll be just fine. No offense to you, don't waste your time. Here's why. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
Welcome aboard the Rhine Express podcast. I know the state of Louisiana is happy today as LSU knocks off Clemson in the national championship game. What a standout performance by senior quarterback Joe Burrow. 5 touchdowns, 463 yards. I tell you, this young man put the state of Louisiana on his back, the team on his back, and said, hey, I'm going to carry you guys to a national championship. I mean, it was unbelievable the season that LSU had. I mean, perfect 15-0 record, knocking off last year's champion, the Clemson Tigers. Hell of a game. And, I mean, if anybody knows Joe Burrow's story, small town Ohio kid, since he was 5 years old, dreaming about playing on the big stage. And, I mean, did he ever deliver? I don't think we've ever seen an LSU team like this. The 2011 team comes up short against Alabama, rematch in the national title game in New Orleans. I believe it was 2017 that Les Miles had. They got in controversy behind that when it was the BCS. I believe they had 11-2 record going in, but they beat Ohio State. Nick Saban, his team wins a national title in 2003, but we haven't seen a particular team like this. Even former NFL wide receiver Randy Moss's son was on this team. Did not know that. Thaddeus Moss played in the game, but just tremendous. For a player to run this NFL offense, had the offensive coordinator Joe Brady from the New Orleans Saints come in. And, I mean, he was, Burrow was on the team last year. And I tell you, just the performance, within a year, just how, he became such a phenomenal dual threat quarterback is unbelievable. Quick story before we move on to NFL. Orgeron was recruiting and invited Joe Burrow to come to New Orleans. They go to some restaurant and they order some crawfish. They tell them they're out. Orgeron makes some phone call and gets 15 pounds of crawfish delivered to the table. Man, I tell you, yeah, those folks in New Orleans love their food. Louisiana definitely love their seafood. So, man, congratulations to the LSU Tigers. Hell of a season. Great season for them. Moving on to NFL. So we're down to the Final Four, who I would have never thought. You got Green Bay versus San Francisco in the NFC Championship. On the other side of AFC, you got Tennessee and Kansas City. I didn't even think about this. And I look at it, and would it be some Green Bay and Kansas City in the Super Bowl, 54 in Miami? course, many of you know the first Super Bowl was Green Bay and Kansas City, with Green Bay winning the first two Super Bowls. So almost over 50 years ago, they're in the first Super Bowl. So history could repeat itself almost several decades later. It's going to be crazy. So we don't have to see the Patriots in the Super Bowl, thank God. I know I'm probably not the only one. I just, after seeing them last 3 years straight, and I think they've been last 4 or 5, it's just, I'm glad somebody different is in. I know last year the ratings were terrible. Low scoring game, things like 13-3 or something with the Patriots and the Rams. So glad we got some new blood in the mix. So yeah, should be pretty good. Before we get into our guests, the last thing with sports. So Major League Baseball is investigating some controversy with, can you believe it, sign stealing, which has kind of came up the last couple of years. But Boston Red Sox head skipper Alex Cora is out. He's done. They've already fired him, moved on. So these, two of the last World Series teams that won it, and I think Cora was with the Astros before he got the Red Sox job. So it's crazy, stealing signs. CC Sabathia was quite voicing his opinion. He's pitcher with the Yankees and said, they kind of robbed us. It was a 7-game series I think it was last year before last, and they were robbed of a championship, he feels like, which rightfully so. But, what are you going to do? Like he said, you can't go back and play the game. So, yeah. So, probably much more punishment, hand-downs coming from the Major League Baseball commissioners. So, that's going to be very interesting to see how that turns out. Well, we'll get to our guest for episode 38. Got Kyle Brown going to be coming on the show. We did this podcast actually yesterday at Starbucks. He actually messaged me, and he didn't know I was doing a podcast, or this was my particular podcast I was doing. And he's actually has some interest. He's actually about to get his degree in communications, and say he has some aspirations of doing a podcast, his own podcast, kind of like somewhat like a sit-down panel, like The View of some sort, and just talking about a wide range of subjects. And he also wanted to talk about police brutality, something kind of weighed heavily on his mind. We also kind of get into some gun control laws and whatnot, and some opinions he has on those subjects. We also lastly get into marijuana, should it be legal, the laws behind it, and whatnot. So, without further ado, we're going to send you to a quick musical commercial break. And then, of course, this is just a pre-show. You have to click over to the actual episode 38. But after this, go ahead and click over, and you'll be serenaded with our voices. And, Kyle Brown joins the Rhine Express podcast this week.
Body, use it, sex game.